October Vagabonds. One discovery of some importance you make in walking the roads is the comparative rarity and exceeding preciousness of buttermilk. We had, as I said, caught up with summer. Summer needs only one say, is a thirsty companion, and the state seemed suddenly to have gone dry. We looked in vain for magic mirrors by the roadside, overhung with fairy grasses, littered with autumn leaves, and skated over by nimble water bugs. As our friend had said, the spring seemed to have dried up. Now and again we would hail with a great cry a friendly pump. Once we came upon a cider mill, but it was not working, and time and again we knocked and asked in vain for buttermilk. Sometimes, but not often, we found it. Once we met a genial old man just leaving his farm door and told him that we were literally dying for a drink of buttermilk. Our expression seemed to tickle him. Good morning, everybody. Had a good morning so far, although today I'm a little bit under the weather. My shoulder aches and I feel a little bit sicky and a little bit headachy. But hey, probably it will pass. Anyway, back to the story. Well, he said, laughing, it shall never be said that two poor creatures passed my door and died for lack of a glass of buttermilk. And he brought out a huge jug, for which he would accept nothing but our blessings. He seemed to take buttermilk lightly, but one evening we came upon another old farmer to whom buttermilk seemed a species of the water of life to be hoarded jealously and doled out in careful quantities at strictly market rates. In town, one imagines that country people give their buttermilk to the pigs. At any rate, they didn't give it to us. We paid the old man 20 cents for we drank 2 glasses apiece. And first we had knocked at the farm door and told our needs to a pretty young woman, who answered with some hesitancy that she would call father. She seemed to live in some awe of father, as we well understood, with a tall, raw-boned, stern old man of the character Brother Jonathan type appeared grimly, making an iron sound with a great bunch of keys. On hearing our request, he said nothing, but motioning us to follow, stalked across the farmyard to a small building under a great elm tree. There were 2 steps down to the door, and it had a mysterious appearance. It might have been a family vault, a dynamite magazine, or the well of the world's end. It was a strong room of the milk, and when the grim old guardian of the dairy unlocked the door, and with a sound of rusty locks and falling bolt, there, cool, were the fragrant pans and bowls, the most sacred vessel of the farm. She bathed her body many times in fountains filled with milk. I hummed to Colin, but I took care that the old man didn't hear me, and we agreed, as we went on again along the road, that he did right to guard well and charge well for so noble and so innocent a drink. Indeed, the old fellow's buttermilk was so good that I think it must have gone to my head. That comes from a collection called October Vagabond by Richard Le Gallion. One I keep going back to is fragments of ancient poetry. Just let this motorbike go, it's not very quiet where we live. Reno, Alpine. Reno. The wind and the rain are over, calm is the noon of day. The clouds are divided in heaven. Over the green hills flies the inconstant sun. Red through the stony vale comes down the stream of the hill. Sweet are thy murmurs, O stream, but more sweet is the voice I hear. It is the voice of Alpine, the son of the song. Mourning the dead, bent is his head of age, and red his tearful eyes. Alpine, thou son of the song, why alone on the silent hill? Why complainest thou, as a blast in the wood, as a wave on the lonely shore? Alfie. My tears, O Reno, are for the dead, my voice for the inhabitants of the grave. Tall thou art on the hill, fair among the sons of the plain, but thou shalt fall like Moror, and the mourner shall sit on the tomb. The hill shall know there's no more, thy bough shall lie in the hall unstrung. Thou wert swift, O Mora, as a doe on the hill, terrible as a meteor of fire. The wrath was as the storm of December. Thy sword in battle as lightning in the field. Thy voice was like a stream after rain, like thunder on distant hills. Many fell by thy arm, they were consumed in the flames of thy wrath. But when thou returnest from war, how peaceful was thy brow! Thy face was like the sun after rain, like the moon in the silence of night, calm as the breast of the lake when the loud wind is laid. Narrow is thy dwelling now, dark the place of thine abode. With 3 steps I compass the grave. O thou who wast so great before! 4 stones with their heads of moss are the only memorial of thee. A tree with scarce a leaf, a long grass which whistles in the wind, mark to the hunter's eye the grave of the mighty. Moror, Moror, thou art low indeed, thou hast no mother to mourn thee, no maid with her tears of love. Dead is she that brought thee forth, fallen is the daughter of Moglen. Who on his staff is this? Who is this, whose head is white with age, whose eyes are red with tears, who quakes at every step? It is thy father, O Moror, the father of none but thee. He heard of thy fame in battle, he heard of foes dispersed, he heard of Mora's fame. Why did he not hear of his wounds? Weep, thou father of Mora, weep, but thy son heareth thee not. Deep is the sleep of the dead, lo, their pillow of dust. No more shall he hear thy voice, no more shall he awake at thy call. When shall it be morn in thy grave, to bid the slumbering awake? Farewell, thou bravest of men, thou conquering the field, but the field shall see thee no more, nor the dark wood be lightened with the splendour of thy steel. Thou hast left no son, but the song shall preserve thy name. Future time shall hear of thee, they shall hear of the fallen Mora. Fragments of ancient poetry. I often come back to that book. With a start, Reynolds awoke, not from sound sleep, but from one of their fitful dozes, into which he had lapsed just before the grey light of morning began to lighten the barn. With an ejaculation of self-rebuke, he sprung up and stood, blinking in the shaft of sunlight which blazed through a cobwebby, dusty window. He, who had intended to depart before sunrise, had overslept. He could hear persons moving about in the farmhouse, as well as the occasional rattling of crockery and the sputter of grease in a frying pan. Then footsteps sounded outside of the barn, and before he could dart to cover, the door slid back and a girl stood before him. Her face, crowned by a wavy mass of fine, spun, fair hair, was the flesh and blood likeness of that portrayed by the picture he carried in his pocket. She wore neither hat nor bonnet, and a dotted bungalow apron covered her from shoulder to ankle. She stared in amazement, her brow puckering as she noted the rumpled condition of his clothing, his drawn features and his bloodshot eyes. "Why, Bob!" she exclaimed perplexedly. "What? Why? How?" As she paused, he moved forward a step, his nails biting into the palms of his clenched fist. Oh, how he longed to take her in his arms and tell her the whole miserable story. Little beads of moisture surged into his eyes, and in a moment she was close to him, resting her hands on his shoulders. "Tell me, Bob," she said anxiously. "Tell me, what is the matter? Why didn't you come to the house? Why are your clothes all mussed up?" Choking back his emotion, he hesitantly placed his hands on her arm. "Don't you know?" he inquired brokenly. "Know what?" she demanded. He hesitated to say the words. "Heavens, Dora, you must have read last night's paper. Don't you know that I'm a murderer? Oh, Dora, I'm a murderer." Her fingers clenched convulsively through his coat and pinched him to his shoulder. "I've killed a man, the man who has given me a chance," he groaned, "all because of the cursed drink." And with his head bowed on her shoulder, he poured forth the story of the fight with Keneally, of his trip to Farm Hill, and of the night in the barn. Then his arms relaxed, and he gently tried to push her away. That comes from the Wide Awake magazine, and it's called Shock, the short story. Now the second part of a poem by George Meredith is called The Sage Enamoured and the Honest Lady, which is part 2. Across his path the spouseless lady cast her shadow, and the man that thing became. His youth uprising called his age the past. That was the strong grey head of laurelled name. And in his bosom an inverted sage mistook for light of morn the light which sank. But who, while veins run blood, shall know the page? Succeeding ere we turn upon our blank, comes beauty with her tale of moon and cloud, her silvered rims of mystery pointing in to hollows of the half-veil unavowed, where beats her secret life, grey heads will spin, quick as the young, and spells her hieroglyphs of phosphorescent dusk devoutly bent. They drink a cup to whirl on dizzier cliffs, for their shamed fall, which asks, why was she sent? Why, and of whom, and whence? And tell thy truth, the legends of her mission to beguile. Hard likeness to the toilful apes of youth, he bore at times and tented the slight smile, and not on her soft lips was it descried. She stepped her way benevolently grave, nor sign that beauty fed her worm of pride, by tossing victim to the courtier knave. Let peep, nor of the naughty pride gave sign, rather 'twas humbleness in being pursued, as pilgrims to the temple of a shrine. Had he not wits to pierce the mask he wooed? All wisdom's armoury this man could wield, and if the cynic in the sage it plead, transversed her woman's curtain and poor shield, for new examples of a world disease, showing her shrineless, not a temple bare, a curtain ripped to tatters by the blast, yet she most surely to this man stood fair. He worshipped like the young enthusiast, named simpleton or poet. Did he read right through, and with a voice she held reserved, amid her vacant ruin jointly plead. compassion for the man thus nobly nerved, the pity for herself she felt in him, to wreak a deed of sacrifice and save, at least be worthy, that our soul may swim. We sink our hearts down bubbling under wave. It bubbles till it drops among the wrecks, but confessions of a woman's breast. She imminent, she honoured of her sex, truth speaks and takes the spot of the confessed. To veil them, none of the women save their vile, plays a traitor to an army in the field. The cries most vindicating, most defile. How shall a cause to nature be appealed, when, under pressure of their common foe, her sister shuns the mother and disown, on pain of his intolerable crow, above the fiction built for him overthrown? Irrational he is, irrational. Must they be, though not reason light shall wane, in them with ever nature as close call, behind the fiction torturing to sustain, who hears in her the milk and sometimes make a tongueless answer, shivered on a sigh, whereat men dread their lofty structures, quake once more, and in their host for Toscan's ply the crazy roar of peril, leonine, for injury majesty, the sigh of dames, in rare and soon suppressed, not they can bind, to shake the structures sheltering them which tames. They're lustier, if not wilder, fixed are they in elegancy, scarce denoting ease, and do they breathe, it is not to betray their martyr in the keratites. Yet here and there along the graceful row is one who fetches breast on deep, who deems, moved by a desperate craving, their old foe may yield a trustier friend than woman seems, and aid to bear the sculptured floral weight, massed upon heads not utterly of stone, may stamp endurance by expanding fate. She turned to him, and this you seek is gone. Look in, she said, as pants the furnace breathe. Frost white she gave his hearing sight to view, the silent chamber of a brown curled leaf. Things that have throbbed air shot black lightning them. No further sign of heart could be discerned. The picture of her speech was winter sky, a headless figure folding a cleft urn, where tears once at the overflow were dry. That comes from Poems, Volume 3. This part of the story he'd skipped. It was too horrible even to think about it. He didn't want to remember how the blood poured inside Dot's fur coat, and how he'd managed to carry the body out of the office without leaking any of her blood onto the floor. He tried to forget the musky sweetness of the perfume of the dead girl, mingled with the other evil blood smell. Especially he didn't want to remember the frightful time he had stripping the gold rings from her fingers and the one gold tooth in her head. The horror of it coiled in the blackness about him. His own teeth rattled against the bottle when he gulped the second drink. He snapped the switch savagely, but when he spoke his voice cringed into the tube. I carried her into the storage room. I got the lid off one of the acid tanks. The vat contained an acid powerful enough to destroy anything except gold. In fact, the vat itself had to be lined with gold leaf. I knew that in 24 hours there wouldn't be a recognizable body left, and in a week there wouldn't be anything at all. No matter what the police suspected, they couldn't prove a murder or charge without a corpus delicti. I had committed the perfect crime, except one thing. I didn't realise there'd be a splash when she went into the vat. Greg laughed, not pleasantly. His wife might think it had been a sob when she heard this record. Now you understand why I went to the hospital, he jerked. Possibly you call that poetic justice. Oh, God! His voice broke again. He thumbed off the switch, mopped his face with a damp linen. The rest, how could he explain the rest of it? He spent a long minute arranging his thoughts. "You haven't any idea," he resumed. "No one has any idea of how I've been punished for the thing I did. I don't mean the sheer physical agony, but the fear that I'd talk coming out of the ether at the hospital, the fear that she'd been traced to my office. I'd simply hidden her wings away, expecting to drop them into the river, or that she might have confided in her lover. Yes, she had one. Or suppose a whopping big order came through and that tank was empty the very next day, and I couldn't ask any questions. I didn't know what was in the papers." However, that part of it gradually cleared up. I quizzed Miss Caruthers and learned that an unidentified female body had been fished out of the East River a few days after Dot disappeared. That's how the police solved the case. I got rid of her rings. I ordered that vet left alone. The other things began about 6 months ago. A spasm contorted his face. His fingers ate their grip into the dictaphone tube. "Jeanette, you remember when I began to object to the radio, how I shouted at you to turn it off in the middle of a program? You thought I was ill and worried about business. You were wrong. The thing that got me was hearing her voice." He gripped the cold cigar, chewed it. "It's very strange you didn't notice it. No matter what station we dialed to, always the same voice came stealing into the room. But perhaps you did notice. You said once or twice that all those blues singers sounded alike. And she was a blues singer. It was she, all right, somewhere out in the ether, reminded me. The next thing was, well, at first, when I noticed it in the office, I thought Miss Caruthers had suddenly taken up with young ideas. You see, I kept smelling perfume, and he smelled it now. It was like a odour in the dark. It is anything that Caruthers wears, he growled. It comes from, yes, the storage room. I realised that about a month ago, just after you sailed. One night I stayed late at the office and I went in there. It seemed to be strongest around the vat, her vat, and I lifted the lid. The sweet, sticky musk smell hit me like a blow in the face. And that isn't all. In the dark. William R. Sickles. Meditation in 5 accents. Like paupers, who at night must dream he is a king, and as a king must dream he is at night a pauper, once again, nor knows just which is which, a shade within a shade. Life and death are 2 concentric circles, each so close to each that neither has existence or distinction from the other. The man who would immortal be must first destroy those very things required for life. So said I to myself, and so believed, for I had scraped the bones of thought all night, and laid each one to dry upon the shelf, all night in depths of darkness, heavier than oblivion within a brain long dead. And found my answer with the morning, when the hours beat on the tension on a gong. Good morning, day, said I know you now. You are the self-same day the ancients saw. And when you tear me screaming from the teeth of blood, when I am weaned of this, my life, you still will be as you have always been. My rope of habit will untwist, each strand will straighten till conformity returns. Back to the germ again, and back the hemp will bloom and quicken. Go to withered seed, another rope by other hands be turned. What shape, what place, what time, who dares to say? William N. Small, and I'm reading from Modern American Poetry, 1935. The flaming old intense desire. The flaming old intense desire, and love, my love, not so supremely thrills. Each waking and each sleeping hours, the thrills have lost some glamour, now no lover one. A cell with doubt and sleepless till the dawn, lifts heavy eyes to sombre velvet hills, and breaks in desperation futile quills, devising praise beyond comparison. And yet, my love, though ardour may be spent, misgivings will not have, nor raging tears, nor rue to rend our fabric of content. Attuned in taste and hopes our bond are deep, and we have made a marriage that will keep our hearts undying, singing down the earth. Arthur Eugene Smith. Lonely Hours. A pale blue sky bends over the hills, a large grey cloud sweeps up the west, and rising higher slowly fills the round of heaven with its breast. The leafless branches snap with cold, the burning ivy banks her fires. Still beauty through a pilgrim old fills many hearts with fond desires. No note of bird nor lightning flash, only the bird in treetops tall, and thud of raindrops as they dash upon the shingles and the wall. Among the willows' knotty maze, the brook slips by with mournful sound. No wind flower as in summer days along its reedy marge are found. Grim days and boundless runs the sea, and white her lips as those of death, white as the seagulls winging free before the cold storm icy breath. The hand of desolation pressed upon both mountain top and plain. A few white snowflakes from the west hide in the dark skirts of the rain. The lips we love found memory seeks, the hand grown cold oppressed by others, and flashes tear wet sweep our cheeks in silence through the long dark hours. Ah, who would seek the past again? Who would not pass the future gates? Dear Muse, teach us the glad refrain. Joy comes to him who patient waits. Harold Earl Smith. Cemetery. It is beautiful here in September, when the leaves first are touched by the frost. She used to remark, I remember. It is beautiful here in September, though my heart lights a smouldering ember of a dream that is faded and lost. It is beautiful here in September, when the leaves first are touched by the frost. No Lin Yu Tong. In fact, I believe the reason why the Chinese fail to develop botany and zoology is that the Chinese scholar cannot stare coldly and unemotionally at a fish without immediately thinking of how it tastes in the mouth and wanting to eat it. The reasons I don't trust Chinese surgeons is that I'm afraid that when a Chinese surgeon cuts up my liver in search of a gallstone, he may forget about the stone and put my liver in a frying pan. For I see a Chinese cannot look at a porcupine without immediately thinking of ways and means of cooking and eating its flesh without being poisoned. Not to be poisoned is for the Chinese the only practical important aspect of it. The taste of the porcupine meat is supremely important if it should add one more flavour known to our palate. The bristles of the porcupine don't interest us. How they arose, what is their function, And how are they connected with the porcupine skin and endowed with the power of sticking up at the sight of an enemy are questions that seem to the Chinese eminently idle. And so, with all the animals and plants, the proper point of view is how we, humans, can enjoy them, and not what they are in themselves. The song of the bird, the colour of the flower, the petals of the orchard, the texture of chicken meat are the things that concern us. The East has to learn from the West the entire science of botany and zoology, but the West has to learn from the East how to enjoy the trees, the flowers and the fishes, birds and animals, to get a full appreciation of the contours and gestures of different species and associate them with different moods or feelings. The importance of living that comes from. I've got a good day planned ahead of me, I think. Just how it started was lost in the hurry of getting down to the absolute certainty that Lottie Peak and another girl staged one of the prettiest scrap scenes since Charlie Chaplin tried to lick his wife's manager at the Alexandra Hotel recently. In fact, the efforts of Charlie as a pugilist are said to be nil compared with the flavour that Lottie and her rival put up. It wasn't exactly Lottie's rival either, so the story goes. It seems that Lottie and another girl were talking in one of the bedrooms regarding the cat who had vamped the temporary affections of Lottie's former beau. A third girl was lying, supposedly asleep. She arose suddenly and challenged in behalf of her vamping friend what Lottie had said. Then the riot started. One of our well-known artists stated next day that it was the best he had seen since young George and Steve Dalton first met at Jock Doyle's. Anyone taking a good look at Lottie would opine that the girl, when angry, might be worth a bet in the real money book. Not much had been heard of Jack Pickford since he became mixed up in the wartime mess. It was no Hollywood secret that Jack was not an over-welcome visitor at the home of Mary and her mother for some time. Things may have been calmed over since Mary settled down with Doug, or rather tried to settle down with him. Olive Thompson, Jack's wife, recently returned from New York, and Jack met her with a whiz-bang of a new car. Jack claimed it had cost him bucks to the number of 10,000. Speaking of automobiles, Roscoe Artbuckle recently received a specially designed motor car that is a humdinger. The price is reported at $25,000. If it didn't cost that much, it sure looks it. Thousands of people viewed the monstrosity for a week in the windows of the motorworks where it was turned out. Of course, the machine is simply to be used as an ad for the prolific fat. Some of the last words in autos have been around here, but they all faded to a sickly, measly brown when Artbuckle came into prominence. Artbuckle says he intends dazzlingly Broadway with it. What may help some, if he uses it in New York, is a license number, which was displayed while the card stood on exhibition here. The number was 606. United Artists, the Big Four and Associated Directors are familiar terms here. Speaking of United Artists, we must pause at mention of Charlie Chaplin and Mildred Harris. They are not united, not so anyone can notice. Shortly after their marriage last year, the doll-like little Mildred and her mother were the observed of all observers at the fashionable St. Catherine Hotel, the Wrigley's Island Palace at Catalina. Whistle indeed appeared the little girl as she sat day after day, gazing across the Pacific blue, whence fly the famous Chaplin hydroplanes from the mainland. The hydroplanes are a venture of Sid Chaplin. Charlie is not in on the deal. though he makes the air trip occasionally. But never did Charlie appear to the knowledge of the vastly interested hotel occupants. Even with her slender, keen-looking mother, the bride waited in vain for her Lottenbar. Occasionally she danced with the visiting picture personally, but Charlie, he came not. That comes from Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 1, Issue 11. The Worldly Way by Monroe H. Rosenfield. "Come back, my child," said the father fond to his boy who had gone astray, "out in the bitter world of sin, out in the solid way. Thou hast entered, my child, yet what of that? And frailty's name is mine. Thy path of sin is naught to me, for repentance is divine." And so it chanced that the lad returned, when the lowering day of life had cast its darkening gloom, and lured him from his way. And wine and song and kindly hands, like the dream of the prodigal son, were lent in humble sweet embrace to welcome the erring one. Hell. Sometimes we say it's colder in hell, sometimes we say it's hotter in hell, and when it rains to hell we cry, it's also hell when it is dry. Married life's hell, so they say, you get home late, there's hell to pay. I suppose it is hell if babes cry at night, and doctors bill, they're hell all right. But still there's hell, yes hell no, and oh hell too, the hell you don't and the hell you do. Now how in the hell can anyone tell what in the hell we mean by hell? By Pneumatic Acron O. Learning. I used to be old-fashioned, I never came to town, but now by God's lickety-split, I love the girls around. I hug 'em, I kiss 'em, I'm a regular up-to-date. By golly, I'm getting wild, but you city ginks just wait. Bill Bancroft, and they all so come from Captain Whiz-Bang. The parting was a heartbreaking scene, upon which I do not care to dwell. The women wept, the men groaned, and the children looked on with scared, white faces. At length they were gone, and I for one was thankful of it. There remained in the laager 17 white men, 4 natives, the tall Boer vrouws who were too stout to travel, the women in childbed and her baby, and Hans Bother's little daughter, Toto, whom he could not make up his mind to part with. Happily, her mother was already dead, and here I may state that 10 of the women and children, together with about half of the cattle, escaped. The Zulu impi never saw them, and on the 3rd day of travel they came to the fortified place of the Griquas chief, who sheltered them on receiving half the cattle in payment. Thence by slow degree they journeyed down to the Cape Colony, reaching a civilized region within a little more than a year from the date of the attack on the laager. The afternoon was now drawing towards evening, but still there were no signs of the impi. A wild hope struck us that they might have gone on about their business. Ever since Indaba Zimbi had heard that the regiment was supposed to belong to the Umtutawa tribe, he had, I noticed, been plunged in deep thought. Presently he came to me and volunteered to go out and spy upon their movement. At first Hans Botha was against the idea, saying that he was a Vagabond Swatso, an accursed black creature, and would betray us. I pointed out that there was nothing to betray. The Zulus must know where the wagons were, but it was important for us to gain information of their movement. So it was agreed that Indaba Zimbi should go. I told him this. He nodded his white lock and said, "All right," and started. I noticed with some surprise, however, that before he did so he went to the wagon and fetched his multi, or medicine, which, together with his other magical apparatus, he always carried in a skin bag. I asked him why he did this. He answered it was to make himself invulnerable against the spears of the Zulus. I did not in the least believe his explanation, for in my heart I was sure that he meant to take the opportunity to make a bolt of it, leaving me to my fate. I did not, however, interfere to prevent this, for I had an affection for the old fellow, and sincerely hoped that he might escape the doom which overshadowed us. So Indabi Zimbi sauntered off, and I looked at his retreating form, and I thought I should never see it again. Okay, that will do for now.